Good evening, everyone. So technically we've entered the evening. It's 3 o'clock. And I'm here live at the Abhivira Foundation page, and I'm very grateful to everyone who's given me the opportunity. Very especially, I would like to thank Mitali Madam, who's been instrumental in helping me focus as well as guiding me through the process. God bless you, Madam. So today I want to talk to you about, for those of you who come in at a later stage, it's about spiritual development. And when we talk about spiritual development, there's something very significant about it. The significant part of spiritual development is, how do we create a beautiful world? A beautiful world can only be created by beautiful people. And when we talk about education, there are hundreds of things that we keep talking about. But in human life, there's something that we've really neglected, and that is the spiritual dimension of education. This spiritual dimension was always taken care of in earlier days. But the problem is, at that time, nobody knew exactly what they were doing. And yet they were giving us a spiritual dimension to our education. We have been teaching spiritual development in the form of moral science as well as when we are talking about value education. But today I want to actually open your mind and help you understand the very reason for spiritual development, what exactly it is. See, it is when you begin to think you're not alone and there's a higher power, and that higher power is going to take care of everything. So that is what keeps us away from a very important notion, and that is a sense of feeling guilty. Most students, they get that guilt when they are very, very small, and it carries them through life. And when they go through life, they're always under tension, under troubles, under problems. And because of these tensions and problems, you know what happens? That all these kids, they develop all kinds of funny things. Right now, I want to talk to you about the difference between spiritualism and the difference between being religious. When we talk about religion, religion is very different from talking about spirituality. They too are things that we need to understand. The first is, now let me talk about Hitler. You see, Hitler thought he was a very religious person, and what did Hitler do? It was really bad. So how can we actually prevent our world from getting into the wrong hands? The object of teaching this beautiful subject, that is spiritual development, is to create human beings who can decide for themselves. Again, I'll repeat it. Human beings who can decide for themselves. We cannot decide for ourselves, because when we decide, it is advertising that decides for us. It is many other things that will decide for us, and we are unable to understand what exactly we require to make the right choices. So the object of teaching over here is, a beautiful world can only be created by beautiful people. Now, where do we get these beautiful people from? Human beings are basically in three dimensions. The first is the physical dimension, which you look at it and it depends on your visual aspects, your background, where you think this person is beautiful and that person is handsome. And then we look into the next aspect, and the next aspect talks about who looks better and who looks worse. All right? So that is the physical thing. You're looking only at the physical. The second is the emotional. The emotional is how people tend to behave with each other. That depends upon how people react to anger, to joy, to frustrations, etc. And the most important one is, when we're talking about the spiritual dimension is, how do people feel satisfied in themselves? How do they actually look at life as a holistic thing? Do they feel comfortable, or do they feel completely somewhere out? Now, let me talk about the difference between the emotional stability as well and the spiritual stability. When we're talking about emotional stability, we are talking about something which is totally different. Emotional stability is about when we talk about how people feel and react to situations. All right, that is the emotional stability. But when we talk about the other portions of our nature, that is how people look at the world as such, and do they feel happy about it. That happiness quotient comes from your spiritual dimensions. Now let me look at one more thing. There are certain movies that I'm going to talk to you about. There was this movie that came out in which it was the burning train. It was in the 1980s, and in this situation, what happens, we see that the train is burning, and there are certain students who really feel very afraid, and their teacher, whose name is Simi Grewal, she sings them a song, and the song is Teri hai zameen tera aasman, tu bada meherban tu bakshish kar. That means it is only you who can save. And there's one line which is really very nice, which says, and the line, I'm trying to get that line, and the line says, O sabse badi taakat wale. All right. O sabse badi taakat wale, tu chahe to aafat tale. I wish we could only learn of this line during this pandemic, knowing that only God can remove it. And when you have faith in God and when such things happen, so that teacher actually taught the kids how to have another perspective of life. So they were only looking at the burning train. They thought everything was going out of control. But then she brought a new dimension in their life and said, no, there is one more dimension that you can look at. And what is that? Sabse badi taakat wale. This is the object of teaching spiritual development. The object of teaching spiritual development is making children understand that there is something greater than them. There is something greater than them, and that person takes control of our entire life. Okay, so God takes control of our entire life. So the object of making children understand spiritual activities and spiritual development. Now, how do we do it in schools? In schools, we do it in a very poor fashion, and that is by teaching them value education, a little of the assembly. Sometimes we do a little scripture work with them. Sometimes we just sing a few songs. But do we really make them understand how important it is for them to be spiritually developed? Now, when a child is spiritually developed, he learns to take a decision, and the decision is that I want to be good. And this decision of how to be good and wanting to be good is actually taken by himself. He becomes a person who's learning to take a decision. He takes a decision by himself and he says, okay, I want to be good. I'm not going to do what others do. I'm not going to steal. I'm not going to tell lies. I'm not going to cheat in my examinations. Now, all these things is what the child works out. Very often in our life, we go through life and everything just works with us. Everything just works with us. We think, oh, I think that's okay. I think that's okay. But usually it's not okay. You know what's not okay? The very fact that we feel that we can do things just the way we are and life will be okay. We usually consider spirituality into traditions or what we call ritualism. So I could wear ritualistic things. For the meaning of the word ritualistic things basically is, so I could wear certain things which have a symbol of religion, but they don't have the essence of it. What is the essence of religion or the essence of spirituality is, can a person remain happy? Can you smile? Can you look at others and be helpful towards others? Because others are important. If we have a world of all selfish people, we'll have a lot of problems. Even during this time of pandemic, it's shocking the way people behave. It's really shocking. Instead, you would think that looking at this pandemic and there's so much of fear, people would actually learn to help each other. In fact, it's not so. There are many people who are actually taking advantage of it. They will overprice their stuff. They will try to cheat you. They will try to cheat people of every kind of things. It's not something like people have understood. No, it's times of pandemic. People are afraid. Let's help them out. That doesn't really happen. When I keep moving ahead, I look at this physical world, the emotional world, and the spiritual world. Now, when we talk about spiritual development, we are talking about how the object of it is how we can make this world, a better society, and very important is, can we have hope? Very often the parents will tell their children, study well. If you don't study well, you're going to have a bad future. This whole question of having a bad future basically demoralizes us. Why? Because we're talking about somebody who takes care of us, somebody who's greater. When we talk about this person who's greater, then how can it be that our future is going to be bleak or bad? So we need to give people hope, sustained peace and sustained joy. This basically is the reason why we teach spiritual development. Now, how do we teach it to our children? We need to teach it to our children by making them understand the value of love, the value of sharing, the value of being able to help each other. So if they can love, they can share, they can help each other, they can make things happen. And I'll be giving you a lot of examples about it, I love this movie, and the movie is called The Lion King. The Lion King has a wonderful value to it, a story to it. I don't know how many of you know it. And The Lion King talks about the jackals taking over, When you have a lazy, useless king who's got no value systems, who doesn't think about his people. His name was Scar. And you know what? This man actually allowed the jackals to take over. Very often, sometimes in schools, in society, you find people, the leadership doesn't take the onus of taking care of people, but leaves it onto others. And that's where the jackals take over. Even in your class, it's very funny. Some teachers will allow the jackals to take over. They'll find all the bullies and they'll give them in charge of the class. I know it's very often, we have this excuse in our schools. Many principals also do it. Many teachers do it. I feel very sad about it. They get all the useless kids who don't want to study, who want to, the bullies. They get the bullies and they make the bullies the monitors, and they think that the bullies can actually take care of the class. Let me tell you, they do the maximum damage in a class. The first thing is, spiritually, they are telling students that the worst guys can rule. How unfortunate. And that's why in our nation, we always say, the guys who are not doing anything tomorrow, they're going to rule this nation. How bad it is, right? So the first thing, if you want to go in for a spiritual development, first thing is eradicate every child who compromises on values. Do not give them a place of leadership. If you do that, your school will run wonderfully well. Your classroom will run wonderfully well. The first thing we need to see is, do children have values? Do teachers have values? Or is it always the teacher without value? Most of the teachers who don't have values become favorites of children. It's a circle of life. It's the circle of life. And this circle of life, again, I'm taking it from the Lion King, where he says, and this is another point, is you need to understand, you need to give more than you take, right? So you should learn to, when you come onto this earth, give more than you take. That is the circle of life. But what we start teaching kids is to take more than they give. So every child learns that. And how does he learn it? Sometimes, very often, the most famous teachers or the most famous kids will be those kids who are cutting corners, who are not doing things. We need to eradicate all that, and that is what we need to really start teaching our kids. Problems related to stealing, problems related to not telling the truth, all right? And all these other things, we need to work it out. Now, how do we actually work it out? It's very easy to say spiritual development, man, there are so many issues. We need to make kids good. It's not easy to make anyone good. In fact, we are not good, right? So how do you do that? The first thing is you need to teach children how to debate and dialogue. I tell you, every day we should have at least 2 or 3 children debating and dialoguing about certain spiritual issues. Ask them to make rules for themselves. Every child, ask every child, what rules do you make about yourself? What do you like about yourself? What things hurt you about yourself? Who do you admire? When you start making children understand, and you realize the kids who are actually the ones who we think are such problem kids, they'll be telling you the best things. Madam or sir, this is what I don't like about myself. Then why do you do it? He says, I can't control myself. So then you tell him, okay, now what you do is you make a graph. You need to teach children how to make graphs, okay? Everyone makes a mental graph. So if you said 100 lies today, that's all right. Don't tell him don't tell lies. You said 100 lies, that's all right. Tomorrow try and make it 95. And then go slowly, go slowly, go slowly. You see, this will help a child to actually develop himself spiritually. Because spirituality is about you not cheating, you not telling lies. It's not about you writing, Rama is a good boy because he gave Amit 5 chocolates. No, that's not it. All right, where did he get the chocolates from? All right, who gave him the chocolates? And why do you think he gave it to him? Just because Rama had 25 chocolates, okay, and he found 5 funny chocolates and he gave it to someone else, he doesn't become spiritually good. So we are teaching moral science, we are teaching our spiritual education all in the wrong manner, isn't it? We are only telling them about what is good, but we are not telling them how is it good and how will it help society. We see, it's very easy to tell people not to tell lies, but do we do the same? When a child asks us a question, can we give him a right answer? Never. Never. Schools sometimes go through great problems. You see, spiritual development cannot be taught as a subject in itself. It has to be taught by a school environment. All right? The people, how does the 4th class employ when he interacts with the clerks, how do they speak? Do they practice? Right? Do they practice spiritual development? Are they spiritually developed human beings? Because unless he doesn't see spiritually developed human beings in his school environment, he or she is never going to become spiritually vibrant. Wow. Thank you, madam. Great. So, we're looking at all these typical things. So, I was just talking about how to teach a child to debate and dialogue. Maintain rules for himself. You please don't understand. We don't need to become great gurus to start making rules for ourselves. A 5th standard student, a 2nd standard student can start making rules for himself. He has some idea of what is right and what is wrong. Tell him to discuss it. Once he or she starts discussing it in the class environment, you see what will happen is he will realize that life is beautiful. Life is actually beautiful. All right. Now, we also need to understand getting out of one problem, and this biggest problem that every child faces and parents don't care about it, teachers don't care about it, and that is guilt. We always try to make children feel guilty. Is this class a fish market? All right. So now the kids feel, yes, we've been branded as a fish market, the worst class in the school. Everything is, so you've already been branded with that. So there's nothing to look up to. But then if you make them feel, why should it be? Why should it be? All right. Why should it be? You can behave differently if you choose to. You can help each other out. You can create an environment where everybody helps each other. And perhaps the spirit of guilt should diminish. People should not feel guilty. I'm not saying do wrong and not feel guilty. No. What I'm trying to say is understand that guilt is not good, right? When you have a lot of smoke going, the minute you pass through something with a lot of smoke and dust, you start putting something in front of your face so that your face doesn't get dirty. You're not inhaling something that is polluted. In the same way, we can always protect ourselves from everything that is evil around us and keep guilt away. Next is, how do we learn to agree and disagree with each other? The spiritual dimension of agreeing with people and disagreeing with people. All right? So we need to learn this fact that everyone cannot be like us. Everyone cannot have my ideology. Everyone has a separate, a distinctive ideology. But your ideology and my ideology should not make us fight. If that is there, then there is some problem and we are becoming fundamentalist. We are becoming despotic in our ideas. We can be very firm with our religious ideology. Absolutely right. But why should it harm the other? Why should it hurt the other? This whole question of hurting others is incorrect. You can always say things, but why have you to be physical? Why do you need to call people names? Why do you have to say things? We must understand that everything pollutes us. Everything pollutes us. We don't pollute the world. Correct? We pollute ourselves by what we take in. All right? So if we take in all kinds of things that create negativity in our lives, and that is what we spurt out. See? They say, when a person speaks, he speaks from the fullness of his heart. So if there's something in your heart that doesn't keep you happy, I'm sure you will always spurt something out. So when we want to look at our schools, or when we look at the students in our schools, and we want to develop them spiritually, it is not by teaching them about some religious activity or something. It is about teaching them, the first thing is how to be honest. How to be honest. How to be guilt-free. How to be happy. How to ask the right questions. So this becomes a spiritual dimension, because if we do not do that, you know what happens? Sometimes children have such a negative view about themselves. Right? They don't understand that life is not about just being a supermodel. No. Supermodels are having problems. Everyone's having problems. And somebody's thinking, I wish I was happy as that man. Right? So we have so many stories. There's this story about the king who wanted the shirt of a happy man. So they had traveled all around the kingdom. They didn't find anyone, excepting one farmer who was singing for joy and very happy about everything. So they said, oh, this is a happy man. So when they went to this happy man, they began to ask him for his shirt. He said, I don't have a shirt. Right? So you can be happy without having possessions. Okay? Something that really makes me sad is when I look at people who get great jobs and, the kind of jobs that we look up to, because of skills and education and knowledge, etc. And after the acquisition of all the knowledge, all the skills, what do? They want to go and cheat people. How do they want to cheat people, They want to cheat people, overcharge people. Today we are having problems everywhere. People don't trust doctors, they don't trust teachers, they don't trust anyone. I mean, nobody trusts anyone in the market, right? It's not that we only don't trust doctors, or we don't trust teachers, or nobody trusts anyone. The reason why we have so much of less trust with people is only because spiritually we have not brought ourselves to the level where I'm satisfied by what God is giving me. Yes, some people may not believe in God, that's okay. But at least are you satisfied by what you're getting through your own labor, etc.? Or do you have to actually cheat others or lie to others? This is where we create a spiritual development in the student, where he begins to find his own inner peace. Now, this inner peace is not definitely going to come through all kinds of exercises. We do all kinds of exercises. We feel good about ourselves, and just because we feel good about ourselves, we say we have inner peace. No, that's not inner peace. A spiritual development comes in when we can look at everything and be responsible for it in a positive manner, right? And we can contribute to society by giving more than we take. All right? So much more than we take. If we give, I think we're going to do it wonderfully in society. Are we able to assimilate ideas where we can agree to disagree? So if somebody says, no, I believe this, he says, yeah, you can believe this, but I don't believe it. That's all right. We don't have to fight. Okay? We don't have to convince each other. We can just move ahead. That's all right. That's all right. We can do that. And the next thing is, I always ask kids, what do you admire in others? So whatever a child admires in others, that is what a child is attracted to. And whatever you're attracted to, you're going to become that. So if you find a child being attracted or admiring all the negative things, you need to start talking to the child and start telling him, you need to now learn to develop a spiritual method of understanding. Everything is not what you see. Okay? There are hundreds of things that happen beyond what you can see. So don't just rely upon this world. Okay? That's why many people can't understand why some people always remain happy. They always get everything correct. Life becomes very easy for them. Life becomes very easy for them. And people say, I think God is doing something wrong. No, God is not doing something wrong. It's only because we've understood the value of life and doing things in the right manner. Wonderful. Great. Thank you everyone who's watching and commenting. God bless you. Right. The next one, I'm almost winding up over here. What you admire in others, you're always going to inculcate it. So always take kids and find out what they admire and give them right role models. Children are not going to learn through anything that is dictated to them, some kind of question and answer. No. Teach them the values of others, what values others had, and how they were able to work it. You need to really harvest goodness. Every child needs to harvest goodness. He needs to practice it. All right? Getting angry, you don't need to vent your anger. You can always understand that there could be another dimension. I could be wrong, the other person could be wrong, but don't we have something known as forgiveness? So if we can teach our kids all these value systems which help us to feel great, only then can we move ahead in life. And I'm so happy that we have this topic known as spiritual development in children. We are always looking at only one thing, and that is how well our child, we talk about kids who are so brilliant because they can write things, they can speak things, they can do things, but we do not know about children who feel nice about things, okay, who don't want to hurt the sparrow, who are happy when they're feeding the squirrel, who tell somebody don't hit the dog, all these things make you feel nice. Why do they make you feel nice? Is there anything that, yes, if we train our children that these are the things that make you feel nice, and children begin to feel that, yes, there's going to be a lot of negative things in the world. All right? So don't get angry at somebody who's beating up a dog or hitting a squirrel. No, don't get angry. Tell them, no, you can always enjoy it. If you give a squirrel a few nuts, you'll feel happier than if you throw a stone. All right. So I think we need to change the dimensions of our students and make them feel that if you are spiritually active, things will become better. And we're talking about students. I just want to leave you with just one thought. There's so many people who will talk about spirituality and they will do all kinds of things that seem to be spiritual. But the minute when it comes to help others, they shy away or move out. I wish every one of us would understand that we need to do a lot more in developing ourselves spiritually, which will make this world a better place, a place where we share and we care. God bless you all and have a wonderful day. Thank you.